An exclamation mark on my life. That is how Lawrence Okolie described becoming world champion with a sixth round stoppage of Krzysztof Glowacki in London last night. He'd already won British, European and Commonwealth titles. He is now a world champion in just 16 professional fights, the same number as his mentor Anthony Joshua at heavyweight. Doing so, Okolie follows in the footsteps of Glenn McCroney, Kyle Thompson, Johnny Nelson, Enzo Martinelli, David Hay and Tony Bellew as British cruiserweight world champions. This is After the Bell Mirror Fightings review and reaction to Lawrence Okolie's victory with me, Martin Domin, with Barry Jones and with Declan Taylor. You were both ringside last night at Wembley Arena. Barry, I'll start with you. What impressed you about Lawrence Okolie?
His patience this time. I think there was an improvement in his last fight, but this one was evident that he has that big right hand. That's where all the power is, obviously. But he was still happy to pepper him with the jab and not get too close. I think that was really important. He was always keeping that range, that distance, and happy to frustrate the other guy and not get frustrated himself. Because I can imagine when you've got a big punch, though I wouldn't know, that all you want to do is knock the guy out. So you want to do that as quick as you possibly can. But so there's an eagerness there to go too fast, too forward. And I think in his career in general, the scrappy performances have been because of that. He's been trying to reach with that right hand before it's been ready, and he's been tangled up and all the holding and grabbing. But this time, he was very disciplined, and he took his time, and he just made that kid frustrate until Głowacki really had to overcommit himself, and then he would throw that right hand. And I thought, tactically, he got it spot on.
He does seem like a very composed individual, Dick. Even, he talked before the fight about how he has no fear, and maybe that's just something boxers have, but he seems particularly just almost not oblivious to what's going on, but almost it just takes it in his stride so much. Even at the end, there was barely a celebration. No, Głowacki was getting treatment, but it was almost like, okay, job done, let's move on. I mean, it's the biggest night of his career.
Yeah, I did. I'll be honest. I fancied him to win last night, but over the course of the week, in those bubbles, it's quite strange because you're obviously seeing them all the time, constantly, and seeing how they operate during the fight week. And we interviewed him, obviously, and he seemed like so confident, but a sort of worrying confidence. He was talking about his ring walk a lot, talking about this, and talking about that, and I was starting to worry. Like, is he focused? But it was the other way. He was so confident and so sure of himself that there was not a single nerve. He did say that there was a few nerves started creeping in, but they would do. But it was funny because in the week they showed, and you might have seen it, Matchroom produced a little documentary called Next in Line, and it was all those guys that you mentioned there, Thompson, Hay, Bellew, all of them, Macronelli, talking about the night that they won the title and how it was the greatest night of their life and the pinnacle of their career and the pinnacle of basically everything they've done. And Okolie was there and he enjoyed it, but afterwards he said, I don't see tomorrow night, I don't see Saturday night as that for me, because it's still just the start of what I plan to do at the sort of pinnacle of the sport. And I think that's what you're alluding to there. There was no mad celebrations. I went to the changing room afterwards, no party, no music on, none of that. It was just sort of job done. And I think you've got to rate that. And because he's only had 60 fights in his life, amateur and professional, and look what he's done and what he's achieved already. He has to be slightly wired differently to have been able to do that. Like when he boxed Savon in the Olympics, he'd had like 20 bouts. Savon had 250 or something like that. He's never cared. He didn't care one bit last night, and it showed in his performance. There wasn't an ounce of concern or caginess. And I think that's what he's going to need, because he wants Bradis, and then he wants Makabu. He wants all the belts at cruiserweight, and then he wants to go to heavyweight. He's going to have to, he can't doubt himself if he wants to do that. And I think that just reflects in his personality and what he's done and what he's come from. And I think that is why he's so successful, because he's just on another planet. He doesn't look at things the way that normal people do, or the average Joe does. And I think that's where he gets his success from.
Is there any danger, Barry, that he doesn't sort of live in the moment and appreciate the moment enough? I guess winning a world title in front of no fans is difficult. So you can imagine it might have been different at another time. But you have to sort of appreciate each of the different steps as you go on the journey, rather than just looking at whatever his end goal is in a few years' time.
I was just thinking as Declan was explaining how Lawrence thinks, and I just thought, sometimes you've got to take stock of what you're doing and go, wow, look what I've done. Because it is a wow moment, and it's a wow moment in your life, and whatever he'll go on to do, and I'm sure he'll have more success. This will still be the start of it. This is it, and so you have to sit back and enjoy it, and appreciate yourself for what you've done, for all your hard work, and these are the fruits of your labour. But also, it's not just him. These kids in general now, this young generation of fighters, don't just want to be a world champion. When I was turning pro, it was just to be a champion of something. But now they have aspirations of being a world champion, and the real good ones are already talking unification. I want to be unified and 3-weight world champion. They have bigger dreams, which is great. But you have to be a little bit realistic, and also you have to, like you said, take stock of what you're doing and just sit back and go, let's just take a bit of time out and enjoy this. Otherwise, you'll get to 38 and you'll be retired and not enjoyed anything, because it just be the focus is fantastic, but please don't let that focus take away for the enjoyment of what you're doing. You have to, like you said, live in the moment and appreciate it, because it don't come again. And I tell you that, but I know that more than anyone. It doesn't come back round again for you. Once it's gone, it's gone. So you have to enjoy it. Luckily, I enjoyed mine, but and I did, because it was just, I didn't think I'd get there. But Lawrence believed he'd always get there, and I think Declan's right. He walks around. He's a giant man, but he's still a young man. He walks around with almost like arrogance. To be fair, I don't think he's an arrogant kid. He's a real confident, calm, real laid back sort of guy who doesn't take any nonsense off anybody and just believes in himself. And I think when you got that inner belief, you can walk around with your head high and go, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll see. And I think the performance, the improvements in him as well over the last few fights have been quite sensational. And I think the maturity in his work and the discipline for the lack of fights that he's had throughout his career is quite impressive.
I think you've got to give credit to Shane McGuigan there as well, because that was punch perfect performance against an awkward southpaw, tough one. Been world champion before, no mug, and it was, in terms of dealing with southpaw that size, it was just about perfect. He won every round and then knocked him out with one shot. It was brilliant. And then obviously as well, that night he had Chris Billum-Smith in a tough fight who won on points and really had to dig deep. And Anthony Fowler showed more improvement, winning stoppage against a good opponent. Like, it was a great night, and it's risky because we saw that with Josh Warrington and Sean O'Hagan. Reece Mogg got knocked out bad, and then he goes back to the dressing room and he's got Warrington's dad's got to go again for a big fight. Don't know if that had an effect, but it's not great, is it? So they had 3 guys on the card. So not only has he got to deal with that three fights on the night, but all week Shane is juggling 3 different fighters in different stages, different fight, different level of fights, different weight cuts and stuff like that. I mean, it was a massive night for that gym, and not once did any of the team look at all worried or concerned. It was so controlled and calm all week, and obviously they got the results and the fruits of it in the evening on the Saturday night, which is what it's all about. So massive credit to Shane and that whole team, because from start to finish it was absolutely perfect.
I gotta say, I was in the backstage when they were warming up. So my room was pretty much in the middle between they were like, I think Okolie was 6 doors down and Głowacki was 8 doors down. So I could hear Głowacki on the pads, loud, big guy. You could hear him, and then I could hear Okolie on the pads, and it was like someone was hitting a wall with a sledgehammer. It was unbelievable, and you just thought they should open the door and let this kid hear that. And you just think, all those technical deficiencies that he has, and he's still got loads of them. Though the jab's improved, so that's great. When you've got those attributes he has, he's using them now at last. And I always thought Shane McGuigan was a good fit for him, because he's not bringing that right foot forward when he throws the right hand anymore. He's turning him off on the waist, and I thought Shane McGuigan would always be good for him for that sort of stand-up sort of style. And his improvement there. I just think he's been a revelation last night. I thought I fancied him to win, but it was more to do with Głowacki being maybe just past his sell-by date a little bit, and the awkwardness of Okolie getting him over the line. But it wasn't that. He tactically and technically got it perfect. jab, 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 frustrate you. And when you jump in, I'll hit you with the right hand. And he was varying that jab and varying the weight in that jab. He was touching with it sometimes. He was leaving it out there, inviting you to dive in, and then he was just pushing it out really hard as well. So I think the mixing up of the levels of the jab as well, that was something that really, I think, made Głowacki just didn't know what to do in the end. You could see he was a real frustrated figure. From pretty much from the second round on, he was kept trying because that's his game, but he sort of knew I just can't get close to him. And when I do get close to him, he tucks me up, he holds me up, and he's even doing that better now.
Yeah,
Okolie. He's been able to get his arms on the inside, and it looks like the guy's holding you. So it's huge improvements.
The problem, or one of the problems, I guess, Deck, with anything in life now, but certainly boxing, a lot of people are thrust into the spotlight early on. So, especially after an Olympic cycle. So Okolie comes through, you have like Joshua Buatsi, Joe Cordina. It's like with Matchroom, it's all bells and whistles. And it's easy to forget, as you mentioned, how few fights he'd had before he turned professional. So there is this, I mean, we've talked about it before with the likes of Anthony Yard. There is this learning on the job, but he had to deal with learning on the job and also just and having big fights. You look, he fought at Wembley. He headlined against Isaac Chamberlain at the O2, which, maybe that's happened with other fighters since then, but at the time I seem to remember it being quite a big deal headlining at that stage, at that kind of event. He's always had to deal with this criticism of his style. It's been a difficult journey for him, hasn't it? And he maybe not have been bothered about it, but other people have certainly given him plenty of grief for it.
Everything has come exceptionally quick to him, and it's not for want of trying, but he got an invite just on the off chance to go and spar Joshua at the Matchroom gym in Essex when he was just an amateur, and he did so well in the spar that Rob McCracken sort of went, where have you been hiding? Who are you? And then he was on GB, and then he was going to the Europeans, and then he was at the Olympics. This doesn't happen to most people. Amateurs plug away for years and never get those sorts of opportunities. And the same thing happened as a professional, and I think his personality and his character has helped. The Source and all that stuff. I remember his signing when he was on the table with Kelly and Cordina and him, that signed by JD money or whatever it was at the O2 that time. And he was the star of the show, and he making people laugh and stuff like that. And they obviously, that often hasn't correlated to his performances in the ring, or at least his style in the ring, because he joked last week that he was watching a video on YouTube and it was like 10 worst boxing matches in history or something. And he said he was 2 of the 8. He was 2 out of 10. It was Isaac Chamberlain and the Matty Askin fight, because you forget that now, because they were stinkers. And I think what happens is because of his style, and he's quite awkward and obviously a really big puncher, is that people go, I don't want to get hit by that. So he misses with the right hand and they hug, reset, misses with the right hand, hug, reset. And that was just constantly happening. Obviously, then you got Southpaw. It could have been an absolute stinker last night. It could have been a tap fest. It could have been 12 rounds of nothingness, and it wasn't. And I think that suggests that, like you say, he's learning on the job, but now it's starting to click a bit, and he's got Shane McGuigan now, and they're working on things. And I mean, how do you go about beating him? He's so awkward, so long, and then when he does get in range, he hits so hard. It's going to be really tough to beat him. Even a seasoned champion like Maris Bradis he's going to struggle. He's going to struggle to have, nobody is ever going to look good against him. And then you could get stopped at any point. It's almost like if he didn't have the backing of Matchroom and when crowds come back and stuff, like an ability to generate money like that, nobody would want to fight him. He'd struggle he'd be who needs him club. But luckily he's got the belt now, and he's a rising star, and he's got the backing of Anthony Joshua and everything else. Although Joshua wasn't there last night, should point that out. People are not going to be looking at him like you're an easy champion. They're going to think, I don't want any of that guy.
I think he will be in stinkers again. I got no doubt about that. I'm pretty sure that's going to be. He's almost like a Johnny Nelson who can be in some awful fights, but is always effective, and will be in some really good fights as well. Because some guys will just commit themselves, and that will make him look great. He holds more than the opponent, to be honest. I think that was in the past. That was the case, and I think with a guy with a lack of experience, you're always worried about not getting hit because you can take a punch or you can't take a punch. Pretty much, it's having punches thrown at you is the biggest issue that you have to deal with, and I think at times he brought that right foot forward to want to hold you because he's never been in that situation of getting people firing shots. And now he's not really in that situation now because he's so far away. He sits on the back foot. Don't forget him on being tall. His arms are longer than what his height, for what his height should be. They're the longest arms I've ever seen in my life. So he has so many great advantages for that. And I just think that makes it difficult for people to fire at him. So he still haven't been under that sort of pressure. And how he copes with that further down the line, if anyone can get inside those long levers. Because it's easy to say you're going to do it. I'll stay nice and low, like Głowacki did, stay nice and low, and I'll come in and I'll slide into that jab and I'll fire the right hand over the top. Southpaw, who can stay low, should be a nightmare for Okolie. And it wasn't. Głowacki got the foot on the outside. He did the best things he could do. He's not the fastest of men on his hands or feet, of course. So that would be someone who maybe be more effective. But again, Okolie just now he knows how to use that jab, and now he knows how to put different weight behind that left hand. It makes him even harder. Forget about being awkward. It makes, because he gets technically better, and he is getting technically better. He becomes from being awkward to just very, very good. And I think it's not just the power now. I think he's starting to get technically better, and that's a nightmare for everyone in both divisions, not just the cruiserweight.
There was some real nuance on the backhand as well. Like, he wasn't just sticking it in straight. There were bolos to the body, even sort of half semi-bolo hooks around the side with the right hand that sort of landed on the top of the head. Głowacki hurt him, I think, in the third round. Looked like he could have gone after him then. He said after, what was the point? He knew he had him hurt, but he didn't want to rush it. And again, that's more testament to, the way he's thinking about it now and the way he's setting it up. And he's got massive, I've got to say, he's got massive feet. He must be size 15 or something like that. So now he's keeping them down, and he's twisting his feet into the shots. He's not falling over the right, and he's not reaching for it. It's just that rotation and the whip with that long arm. You think, when you think of Michael Phelps was like this freakish body and it made him this amazing swimmer. It's almost like you've made the perfect cruiserweight. Although, it's not how you would think of a pitchbook cruiserweight, but you're like, right, he's got long levers. He punches really hard. He gets this mad power, and you can't get to his head. It's just about impossible to beat. It's going to take someone special to beat him and to look good against him. His
aim, as we said, has always been to unify. You've mentioned Marius Bredas, who's the obvious one, I guess, if you want to assert yourself as the best in the division. Is that, I guess, Barry, you have plenty of options. If you become world champion, you can move up, which he said he will do in time, but not yet. You could have a few soft defenses if you wish, sort of, establish yourself, or as he wants to do, go after the other champions. I should give a shout out, you mentioned him before, Lunga Makabu, of course, of Tony Bellew fame, rebuilt himself very well since then. The WBA, of course, have two champions, as they always do, Arsene Goulamirian and Riyad Mehri. I'm sure you know more than me, but Bredas is his target. Is that what you would, if you were advising him, if you were in his shoes, is that what you would be doing, looking for the main man in the division now?
I think first of all, the fact that he mentioned Bredas first just shows again his confidence that he didn't pick, I want to pick up all the belts, I don't care who. He's picked the best one straight away. I want him, because the others might be harder to make and whatever, but I think that can be a fight that can be made, of course, because I think Bredas is with the Sauerlands, I believe. Yeah. So I think that'll fight that, the Matchroom and the Sauerlands work together quite well. So that's a fight that can be made, and it's the two best in the division for me. I think Makabu is too slow a foot and I think he get finished early, like he did against Bellew, but probably not have the same success that he had against Tony Bellew, I don't think. But by the way, what a win that is for Bellew. Looking back now, at the time it looked like an easy route to the world title, but actually it's turned out to be a fantastic win. I think they want to get him the heavyweight as soon as they can, so I think they want to try and make it a unified, undisputed, but I don't think they're going to get the undisputed cruiserweight title. You get unified, you get one extra belt at best. It must be really difficult to make the weight. He says it's not, but just that frame alone, it's got to be hard. And then it's the bulking up period to move up the weight, because then once he gets up to heavyweight, that height is the same as everyone else's, and that reach is reduced a little bit, and the advantages and the luxuries you have at cruiserweight are no longer there at heavyweight. So again, it's another learning on the job experience for him. But I think if one that he relishes, I don't think he's scared of learning on the job. I don't think he's like, oh, I'll stay down at cruiserweight as long as I can. No, I'll have it easy because they're all like 6'3" and I'm 6'6" and I got the reach of a 7'2" fighter. He's put me up there. I want to fight Joshua, who's 6'9", has a long reach himself, or Anthony Joshua, who's 6'6". I want to get in and challenge him. So, but he wouldn't fight. Would he fight his manager? That's the.
Nah, he said we asked him that, and we thought that'd be a nice little angle. But he said, to be honest, my mum would support Joshua if we fought. He said his mum would not allow it because of what Joshua's done for his life and whatever else. So that would be interesting, wouldn't it? He said the only way I'd fight Joshua is if Joshua would turn around and said, I want you, I want to fight you. So he'd go the other way. He'd go the other route.
Maybe that's why Joshua didn't turn up. Maybe he's thinking.
I'm just thinking. I'm reading between the lines. Maybe he's training for him already.
Be careful now, because that'll be a narrative. You'll read that somewhere now.
It does feel like it might not be the worst time to go to heavyweight. Maybe not right away, as we said, but the belts are tied up more or less, probably for I don't know, the next 18 months, perhaps. In terms of, although they're going to split up again, it could be a good chance for Okolie to squeeze in there. Maybe, I don't know, summer, end of next year, Dick.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that he will attempt to win all the belts. What we're in March now, he's obviously definitely going to do the rest of this year at Cruiser. I reckon, yeah, the back end of 2022, he'd probably look for a heavyweight debut. I don't think they'll rush it. I do think, I'm interested to see what they do with him frame-wise, because he is tall, but he's pretty wiry, obviously, because otherwise he wouldn't make cruiserweight. But he's got a really good training team around him. He trains with a guy, Dot Training, who has got him obviously working on power and long leaves. I think he's got a basketball background, so that, it's not a problem for any decent strength and conditioning coach to get an athlete like that and build them up. It's not like he's super fast or anything like that. Like with Usyk, there was a worry that putting extra weight on him might slow him down and might affect. I don't see that being a problem with Okolie. It's just about intelligently doing it. And when you think about the size of him, he's already taller than Dylan White. He's taller than Derek Chisora, taller than Joseph Parker. Okay, you've got the big guys who he's going to look like a cruiserweight against, but really he's not that, he's not far off. Usyk for me was always a bit more of a concern because he just seems a bit smaller, but physically his stature, he looks like a heavyweight. I think it would be a good thing for him actually to carry on in big fights at cruiserweight for his learning, to be honest, which sounds crazy that it would be in unifications trying to learn a bit and get a bit more seasoned. But I think that, can you imagine what he's going to learn in a fight with Bradis if it goes long and he, has to try different things and work stuff out? I mean, it would be absolutely invaluable. And I hope as well that someone like Bradis might look at Okolie and go, I need to get to him like now, because he's only going to get better and, he's raw still. And then that might play into the fans' hands and that we actually get to see that fight and they don't try and avoid him or anything like that. I think we've got another year maybe of Okolie at cruiserweight, and it will only be big fights, I would say. I don't think he's going to just look for soft defenses and stuff like that. I don't think he's in any mood to do that whatsoever. Just look at his life as a boxer so far. He's never hung around and done that. So I would think it will be unification. As soon as they dry up, he'll go to heavyweight. I reckon a year more at cruiserweight, and then he'll be ready.
I don't know if it'll be that long, to be honest. I understand that's what they should do, but I just think that once he becomes heavyweight, the money changes straight away, doesn't it? And I think, and you've got to see that. You'll see Derek Chisora now, who's pay-per-view again. From he's got a winning record, but it don't seem that way. At the highest level, he's got a losing record. And you'll think, I'll fight Derek Chisora, my first heavyweight fight, and they'll be pay-per-view. Yeah. And my money goes up like an extra nought straight away. It's different gear. So, and that would be feasible, by the way. And I wouldn't be surprised that if he became heavyweight like next February, I could see his first heavyweight fight being Derek Chisora on a pay-per-view event.
It's funny you should say that, because Chisora was there last night, and afterwards we were speaking to him, and they sort of broke off halfway through to hug Okolie. They're really close mates. Chisora basically sorted out all his sparring for this camp. He obviously was sparring southpaws. Chisora, very, very close. But I would wonder if the money that they would generate, and obviously with Chisora, what he's like business-wise, he'd be up for it if it makes sense. I would be interested to see if that was a fight they would make, because it would be, he has turned into this gatekeeper. Just look at Usyk, this high-level gatekeeper. It sounds disrespectful, but it's not. That would be the sort of perfect fight, but I don't know if they're too close for that, and they're mates. The fight that we hear about quite a lot, and there is a little bit of background there, is the Dillian Whyte fight. It's hard to say what happens with Dillian Whyte now. Obviously, he's boxing next week, and if he wins, he obviously has aspirations at the other end of the sport, and he might see that as a step down. But again, if it makes money and there's a narrative there, maybe that's a fight we see, and that's an interesting one, because Dillian Whyte, not a huge heavyweight, big puncher, but he's not colossal, is he? He's not 6'9". So the options are brilliant, and you're right. As soon as you start putting these people together, you start thinking that is pay-per-view, that will make money, and then maybe they will do it much quicker than a year.
It is, and you see why all these fighters, they go to heavyweight quicker than what they should, or they shouldn't, or they could stay around the cruiser, because that's the only reason David hated, as much as he struggled to make cruiserweight. It was just for the money, and you can't blame them for that, because it changes. Just it's not like a few extra quid; it's life-changing money over in a one fight. And you sort of say, well, Derek Chisora, don't be disrespectful. It's not disrespectful. I was saying he's a gatekeeper. How can it be? He's earning millions per fight as a gatekeeper. It's I've never seen anything like it in my life. It's good luck to him. Congratulations, but I've never seen anything like it in my life. That a guy who loses all the big fights that he has, but he loses them with a badge of honor because he's tough and he's brave and he gives his all, is worth 10 times as much as Chocolatito. Figure that out. That's the sport, but that's the lure and the attraction of the heavyweight division, and that's where Okolie's going to end up, most definitely.
While we're on the heavyweight division, we might as well have a quick word on next weekend. Dillian Whyte's rematch with Alexander Povetkin in Gibraltar, of course. Why not? Declan, are you going into this fight, having seen the first fight? Are your feelings, predictions different to them, the same as them?
Well, it's funny you should say that. First of all, got to point out, me and Barry both going to Gibraltar, and the bubble is on a boat. So that's going to be novel. It's a very weird old experience. The weather looks lovely, but we'll be on a boat. So hopefully, next week we'll do this from a boat. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought that was possible? But do you know what? I actually, I fancy Povetkin, but in the first fight, I realised the danger that he would pose one punch-wise to Dillian Whyte. I didn't see those few opening rounds happening where he basically did whatever he wanted to him and, had him going, ready to go, and then I didn't expect that, but I knew Povetkin was dangerous. The one thing I'm worried about, the one thing I do think is going to be a factor in this fight is that Alexander Povetkin the reason that it's only happening now is he had COVID bad, apparently, we're told. He went to hospital with it. And then he started camp, and the fight was supposed to happen much earlier this year. And then he had to stop training because he had, the long COVID or whatever. Again, this is just what we're told, and it's been confirmed by the team. My worry, my feeling towards this fight is if there's any ill effects of COVID, which obviously we're told physiologically is terrible for your, your breathing and your fitness, and that seems to be the big problem. Is that when you get over it, you don't really get over it. Look at Rachel Ball, had to withdraw just because you can't get going. She tries to start camp, and you're just like, I can't. There's nothing there. There's nothing in the lungs. If that's in any way how he's feeling, a fight against Dillian Whyte, if he's anywhere near approaching full flight, after a long camp and, having that fire lit under him from getting stopped in the first fight, I think Povetkin could be in trouble. And who knows, many fighters in the past have gone into a fight not fit because they go, well, I'll get there and I'll get paid. I don't really care. I'll do it. If I'm getting 2 million quid, I don't care if I'm going to be knackered on the night because I want my money rather than not turning up. Povetkin hasn't got long left in the sport. So I just worry about the COVID, and we won't know about the effects of it until he gets in there. And I think for me, reading into what has happened and that illness and that condition that he's had, I can't see. I think it's all in Dillian Whyte's favour, and I think it's similar to the first fight. It's going to take something special on the night for Povetkin to win the fight, but. Has he still got that? Even if he's half fit, maybe he's got one of them. And what another thing we don't know is he going to be gun shy, Dillian Whyte, after getting hit like that? The last time he was in a boxing ring competing, he got hit like that, and he woke up on the floor not knowing what had happened. So that's another thing. How is he going to react to that? We saw how Joshua did. He came back and boxed Ruiz's ears off and won his belts back. But not everyone does that. So I think it's a fascinating fight for two heavyweights in a non-title fight. I think there's a lot of really intriguing little storylines, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it's obviously it means a huge amount for Dillian Whyte's career, because if he loses this one, that's him basically done at the top level.
Would you like to see Dillian Whyte make specific adjustments, Barry, or is it a case of he got it wrong at the moment in that fight?
There's not massive adjustments. There's little adjustments that will make a massive difference. And I think for me, you got Harold Knight in his corner. I think that will help with a solid jab, because obviously being with Lennox Lewis for all those years and Emmanuel Stewart, that solid jab is something that was the most important to their game. And that was what I sort of mentioned that before the first fight, that he needs a solid jab, Dillian Whyte, because he throws it and he brings it back to his waist. That invites someone to come forward. All that happened in that fight, when you look back and watch it again, though, Povetkin was always in it, though getting beat, and he wasn't that hurt when he got knocked down. When you look back at the time, you think it because you're in it, and you think, oh, he's been hurt, but he wasn't. He was right. Caught. Yeah, and he's so experienced he is, and he just steals your space. And I think because Dillian likes to block and counter, then he wants you in close. And because he was having success when Povetkin was in close, he was comfortable with Povetkin in close. But that was the issue lied. It needed to be a strong jab, keep you on the end of that jab all the time. And never, even if you want to do your things you used to doing, let the smaller guy have to reach at you. That's what he should have done. And I think now, especially with Harold Knight in his corner, he will be a little bit more that way. If he keeps on the end of the jab and don't try and knock him out in 2 rounds, he'll knock him out in 7 rounds, because Povetkin is past his sell-by date, though still good. And he has got slower feet than he used to have. He never had fast feet in the first place. So I think he can win. But if he lets him in close, and the problem is Dillian likes to have a wall. That's just in his nature. If he lets him in close, he might not Povetkin out, but he's put himself at risk. And that's all that happened the last time. He got comfortable with him close because he wasn't really getting that hurt. And then he dipped down Povetkin. He did that Povetkin signature move, dipped over that front foot. Rather than come back with the left hook, he came back with the uppercut. And it was a beautiful shot, which he's thrown many times before. It wasn't a fluke. That's muscle memory for Povetkin. So if he keeps on the end of a solid jab, I think it can be a comfortable win for Dillian Whyte. But discipline's the key. And I fancy Dillian Whyte like I did in the first fight. But I'm not sure that Dillian has that discipline that he might need. We'll see. The intrigue is there, that's for sure.
It certainly is, and we will be back next Sunday. Well, 2 people. I'm just trying to avoid thinking about what I'm going to be faced with when I log on Sunday morning.
I have to say, Martin, look, Declan said we're on a boat. It's not quite a boat. It's a cruise ship.
It's more of a cruise ship.
It's beautiful.
Declan, we might be on top deck with our shades on.
Did you get the email about being able to choose your room?
Don't start with this. You tried to get me yesterday. I got the suite anyway. I got the overlooking the, I don't know what you call it. What sea is it? Mediterranean one side, Atlantic the other?
It is, yeah. But you're so tall, you're going to have to open the window and sleep. Put your feet out.
It's going to be a good week, I think. I think it's going to be a good week.
I'm sure we'll hear all about it next Sunday, when we will, of course, review Dillian Whyte's fight rematch with Alexander Povetkin. Please do join us then. Thank you for joining us this week. Until next time, goodbye.